Make sure we're all in place before we begin.
Mayor, staff is ready whenever you are.
Thank you very kindly. Okay, sorry to the public that we're starting just a couple minutes late, but we just finished a closed session. Wanted to make sure everybody was ready to go. We're going to go ahead and call the San Bruno City Council meeting, a regular meeting of July 26, 2022, 7 p.m. Call it to order. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Hamilton.
Here.
Councilmember Marty Medina.
Here.
Councilmember Salazar.
Here.
Vice Mayor Mason. Here. Mayor Rico Medina.
Here. Thank you very much. Now we'll go on to item number 3, Pledge of Allegiance. If everybody would join me in the pledge, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, now we'll proceed on to item number 3 for items for public members not on the agenda this evening. Individuals will have up to 3 minutes to talk about any items that are not on the agenda for this evening. Items raised in this forum are for staff for investigation and or action where appropriate. The Brown Act prohibits the council from discussing or acting upon any matter not agendized pursuant to state law. And at this time, and if I could ask Lupita to assist in bringing in the folks for this evening.
The first speaker is Virginia Yankee. Virginia, whenever you're ready.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. San Bruno, the city with the heart. Maybe, maybe not. 2 weeks ago, I spoke at the city council meeting about a concern and comments I had about the senior center. I expected to have some response from the boss there. I have nothing at all. And I have been there every day except once. I would expect some comment of discussion from the boss or her representative. Secondly, I know another person put a note in the suggestion box, and she too never heard a thing. Why have a suggestion box if the boss ignores it, even reading it and discussing it with the board? Did this happen? Nope, did not. Lastly, there was a greeter at the door who made sure that everyone signed in and made sure folks had a mask. That greeter job seemed to disappear. The person was the highlight of coming into the center. Many folks are saddened that the greeter isn't there now. What happened to that welcome we all love? It made us feel welcome and very important. I shall see what the outcome of my comments will be this time. What does it take to discuss my concerns with someone there? I always thought that the senior center was part of the city with a heart, but I'm beginning to realize and to really believe that it is heartless. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your remarks. And next speaker, please.
Next speaker is Sandra Perez Vargas. Sandra, can you hear us?
So it's Stephen Seymour. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, great. And I do want to say on the front end that Sandra will also speak about a topic unrelated to the one that I'm going to speak about right now. All right, so I just quickly I want to talk about something that just happened to me in the last like 20, 30 minutes. Actually 20 minutes, maybe less. We were driving like we do often down San Mateo Avenue, and there was a number of cars that were double parked, and as we approached one in front of, I forget the name, Lotus Restaurant, there were several cars that were coming the other direction, so we couldn't. Immediately we could not go out into the other lane because we would have been hit. And the gentleman in front of us pulled up, and he jumped out. He didn't put on his blinkers, and we kind of, said, could you move on so that we could get by? And he was somewhat confrontational, but not overly. And so I got out. I was in the passenger seat. My wife was driving. She was going to pull up around the corner. I got out just because I wanted to walk into the store and say, can you do anything about asking your customers not to double park on San Mateo Avenue? I now regret getting out because the gentleman was very confrontational, and I did not walk up to him, but he walked up to me, and he knocked my phone out of my hand, which is fine. My phone is fine. It's okay. But he was very confrontational. And I only bring this up because we need to do something about double parking on the avenue because it could potentially cause some problems. And it's not getting better; it's getting worse. The police did come out. They did show up, and I was happy to talk with them. But I just want the council and the city to think about doing something more about the double parking on San Mateo Avenue. And that's what I have to say. Sandra also has something to say. If there are others before she speaks, that's fine, but she is here. The hand is still raised for Sandra.
Yeah, at this time, since just for convenience sake, I'd like just to move to Sandra, if that's okay.
Yes.
Please.
Hello. Hi. How's everyone doing tonight?
Good.
I do think that my husband kind of understated what happened. This guy was really confrontational, screaming at the top of his lungs, calling us Karens, and who do you think you are, the police? And then the girlfriend verbally attacked me. But anyway, it's out of control. Unless we ticket people instead of just asking them to move on when the police are down there, nothing is going to change, and somebody's really going to get hurt. Because this guy felt he was completely entitled to double park, get out of the car. There was another car where they were just standing around talking. They weren't even running in and out to get anything. So it's extremely serious. But the reason I'm calling is about Florida Park. Florida Park, by the way, thank you, Marty, and your friend Martine. The flowers you guys planted look phenomenal. And I'm so glad you planted them because we were told that we were going to have 18 or so trees lining the park. If you hadn't done that, all we would have was a tree that had been removed and grass. So thank you, Marty and Martine. I really appreciate it. You guys did an amazing, amazing job. And also, I wanted to thank Robert in Code Enforcement. He is probably the most motivated code enforcement person we've ever had. And he's dealing with a lot. I mean, there's just so much going on. And in my opinion, as hard as he works, it's going to be hard for him to catch up. Things are getting worse, not better in San Bruno. There's just litter and dumping in the same areas as always downtown. If it wasn't for the residents cleaning it during the day, I don't know what that would look like. It's been really pretty bad. And it's just really getting discouraging. It's like you go out to have a nice walk and you're assaulted by having to walk around cars that are double parked in their driveways, blocking the sidewalk. When is that going to be addressed? I mean, this is a safety issue, a major safety issue. You know, a lot of us are driving less. Gas prices are expensive. We're trying to get around, but it's hard to do it safely. And, you know, I just don't know how more I can emphasize that as pedestrians, we're really concerned. Could we do a blitz like for drunk drivers, how they set up the roadblocks and they blitz? And could you do that? Go from neighborhood to neighborhood, go up and down, whoever's blocking the sidewalk, just ticket them. I mean, how many times do we have to warn them? Like on San Mateo Avenue, how many times do you have to warn the same people? Here it's the same people over and over again. And before I run out of time, you guys are all invited. AZ Gallery this Saturday, 12:30, sensei exhibition that's going to be beautiful. You're going to have 5 artists of Japanese descent talking about the internment camps. So I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you both for your comments. Next speaker, please.
We'll now be bringing in Nancy Foreman.
Okay.
Nancy, whenever you're ready.
Hi, this is Nancy Foreman. I live on Poplar between San Felipe and Santa Lucia. And I want to address the flyer that I read today about San Bruno Parkway being closed for construction. I understand that. My concern is that it is saying it's going to divert traffic down Crystal Springs to El Camino, right turn, and then a right turn back on Santa Lucia. For over 4 years now, I've been begging traffic and safety. I've talked at City Council to please do some kind of traffic mitigation on Santa Lucia. I put in a petition that the majority of my neighbors signed on Poplar Avenue. I was told I didn't do the right petition because it was right at the time when the city was transitioning how you do a traffic calming measure, but I didn't have any information on that. It was COVID. I've heard now that it might come back up in the future. I'm incredibly worried about people trying to exit Poplar to turn right or left onto Santa Lucia because it sits lower than Elm, than Linden, than Acacia. And I'm afraid somebody's going to get really hurt. And now we're encouraging more traffic on Santa Lucia, and nothing has been done in terms of any type of traffic mitigation. And it just really worries me. And thank you. And the other item I saw today was I was at Lucky in San Bruno Town Center, and between Lucky and Lowe's, there's like a little homeless encampment developing under the awning for Lowe's sod, and it has me incredibly worried. So I would appreciate it if the police could do a wellness check on that. And that's it for my evening. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your comments. Next speaker, please.
I will now be bringing in Gemma Lee and Jason. Gemma Lee, whenever you're ready.
Hi, this is Jason Texan. We'll actually need 2 3-minute sessions. So this is Jason Texan of Cash 22 Salon and Boutique in San Bruno. So during the San Bruno Council meeting on 13th of July, there was mention by both Councilman Marty Medina and Pamela Wu about steps the city is taking to measure satisfaction of services the city provides, specifically with the permitting and inspection process. So just to give a little example, I wanted to validate whether the experience that my wife and I went through opening our business in San Mateo, on San Mateo Avenue, was one-off or part of a deeper issue. I saw feedback from residents and business owners of San Bruno, and they openly shared similar experiences with the permitting and inspection process. To my surprise, not one provided positive feedback. Business owners have even opened their businesses in San Bruno as far back as they can remember, but as recently as 3 months ago, also share the same sentiments. The process is just that. Because my wife and I are both residents and business owners in San Bruno, we have a vested interest in ensuring future residents and business owners have a positive experience renovating their home and launching their business. So in closing, and in the spirit of transparency, I have 3 questions. What is the City Council doing to improve the permitting process? Number 2, how does the city plan on holding its in-house building planning team and its third parties accountable? And number 3, what steps is the city taking to ensure business owners are set up for success? Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Mayor Medina, there are no other hands raised.
Actually, generally Texan would like to go.
Yeah, no, Jason had said, okay.
Okay.
Hello, good evening, everyone. I am very upset about about the July 13th council meeting. One is Pamela Wu was giving false statements that I have endorsed the W3C, that they did a good job. I have never written any letter, as she claims. I have never submitted any survey saying that I was very happy and pleased with the way that my business was handled. In fact, it was all the opposite of it. I had spoken about this to Mr. Marty, Enrico Medina, and also Linda Mason. So I don't know what this woman is thinking. Just being very dishonest. And this is a big concern for us. One, because we live in San Bruno. We have now a business in San Bruno. And the fact that she went as far as claiming that I wrote a letter is so dishonest and so misleading. So I just was very upset that my that my name and my business was mentioned in behalf of W3C getting an extra $250,000. That's a big concern. So I don't know what you have to do to address that to Ms. Wu. In fact, I've only met her once. Marty and Tom had stopped by, and she did say, if you have any questions or problems, you may give me a call. And I did, and no phone calls back. And I didn't just call once. I called several times, and I've never heard of her returning my call. So with that said, I'm very disappointed that you guys still voted for W3C to get an extra $250,000 in with what I shared with my experience. That's all.
Thank you for your comments. Next speaker, please.
No other hands raised.
Okay. Thank you for those that are here, and thank you for those that commented. Next, we'll move on to item number 4, which are announcements and presentations.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor.
Can you not hear me?
No, I just wanted to temporarily interrupt you over that. Staff will be getting back to the people who spoke up today. Just wanted to see what was going to happen because it didn't happen last time. Thank you.
Okay. Now we'll move on to item 4, and thank you for the pause, Lupita. I appreciate it. Announcements, presentations. I apologize. Item 5.
Item 5A, the nomination period for the November 2022 municipal election opened on Monday, July 18th, 2022. The City of San Bruno recently transitioned to by-district elections, and this November, Districts 1 and 4, as well as the at-large mayor, will be up for election. For information about the November 2022 election, please visit sanbruno.ca.gov/elections. Next announcement, item 5B. The next virtual workshop for the Safe Routes to School project is scheduled for July 28, 2022 at noon to provide updates on the planning process and opportunities for feedback on the draft recommendations. We hope you're able to attend. Get more information at sanbruno.ca.gov/saferoutes. Next item, 5A. Summer is upon us. That means that the City of San Bruno will happily host concerts in the park on Fridays in August and Mondays in the park on Fridays in September, both at San Bruno City Park in front of the tennis courts. Visit sanbruno.ca.gov/community services for this and other fun programming for the entire family. Next item, 5D. National Night Out 2022 is on Tuesday, August 7, 2022. National Night Out is an annual community building campaign that promotes police community partnerships and neighborhood camaraderie to make our neighborhoods safer and more caring places to live. For more information on National Night Out, visit their website at natw.org. If you are interested in hosting an event in your neighborhood for National Night Out, contact Officer Sexton by Wednesday, July 27, 2022. Thank you.
Thank you very much for going through and reading those. I appreciate it. And it was already brought up by Nancy Foreman, is that City Parkway August 1st is being closed. And so obviously there are detours, and that's going to be through, at this point, the end of the year. So just as a heads up to all, as we go back to school and et cetera. Let's move on to item 6, consent calendar. All items are considered routine, implemented an earlier council action, and only may be enacted by one motion. There will be no separate discussion unless requested. We have items 6A through 6J. Is there any item to be pulled for a separate vote? Okay, we'll move on to items to be pulled for comments, questions, or clarifications. I do know, I do need to ask that we have item H that will be updated on. And so that's just to clarify the resolution. And Vice Mayor Mason.
Wait one second, I'm sorry, I just need to scroll back up for the exact item number.
Nope, no worries.
Item I, please.
Item I. Okay, perfect. I'm seeing no other hands. So at first, we will go to item H, adopt resolution vacating public service easements over a portion of the property at 1500 Bay Hill Drive. 2, vacating roadway easements within Bay Hill Drive. 3, accepting the dedication of the utility and roadway easements within Bay Hill Circle. And number 4, authorizing the city manager to execute implementation, conveyance documents, and agreements in substantially the attached forms, and adopt the resolution authorizing various curb markings. And at this point, we just need staff to go ahead and read and note the changes. And at this time, we're going to turn it over to City Manager and Matt Lee, Director Lee. Whoever would like to go first, please.
Sure. Thank you, Mayor. I'll have Director Lee go through and read changes into the record from one of the exhibits. And Director Lee, as you read them into the record, and you note that it's Section 7, respectively, and then Section 20, subsection E, as you read them into the record. Take it away.
Correct. Thank you. Good evening, Mayor Medina and members of council. My name is Matt Lee, the Public Works Director. For this evening, what we're going to do is we're going to slightly modify the resolution to have it resolved so that the treatment measure maintenance agreement is also executed and approved by council. This agreement was originally in the staff reports as an attachment, and it's just administratively ensuring that it's also part of the resolution. I'm going to share screen and highlight the sections that are being modified in the resolution itself. I'm hoping you can see screen. I just want to make sure it's there before I read it. Okay, perfect. I see a thumbs up. So in section 17 of the resolution, which is inserted now, and it moves all the other sections down a level. Section 17 states that City and Google have negotiated the terms of a stormwater treatment measure maintenance agreement attached in Exhibit J that will require Google to construct, operate, and maintain stormwater treatment measures on the Google property treating stormwater from the project. The terms of this agreement are hereby approved, and the city manager is authorized to execute the same subject to such minor amendments necessary to effectuate the intent of the parties. The other additional add is in section 20, item E, which moves the other items down. is to record stormwater treatment measures maintenance agreement as attached in Exhibit J and executed by the city manager and the office of the recorder of the county of San Mateo. So those are the amendments to the resolution.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions from colleagues or needing clarification from what was described by the city manager and Director Lee? Okay, seeing none, we're going to move on to item I. Adopt resolution authorizing the reclassification of a budgeted police officer position to a police corporal position and approve the transfer of $9,456 from account number 001-2010-5105 to regular salary, and again, it is a different number. It's 001-2010-5101 and related benefit accounts to fund the reclassification. And now we're going to turn over to the Vice Mayor.
Yeah, I was just going to ask that we, and I'm not quite sure if we need a separate motion for this, but that a year from the action being taken, that the council receives an update on the fiscal impacts. So what was the actual overtime? We don't receive regular reports on overtime, but provided the unfreezing of the 2 police positions and this change, I think it would be beneficial to see what the difference is a year from now. Is that, this might be a question for the city attorney.
Okay. We also have the city manager available, but city attorney, and then I'll ask the city manager also for some input.
Sure. Mayor, if you will, before the city attorney, I'll just note that in the staff report, we do note that we will come back to the city and look that we will take a quarterly look at the overtime savings. We will certainly report those back in your quarterly financial reports, as well as an end of year report when we're going through the budget and discussing estimated actuals. So we will certainly do that. I think the question to the city attorney is, can that be added to the resolution as direction, or does there need to be a separate vote to direct staff to come back at the end of the year?
Well, just to be clear, the report says the police department will analyze the actual overtime expense savings associated with the scheduling change on a quarterly basis from September 2022 through May 2023. Should the analysis reveal reliable overtime cost reductions, the police department will likely recommend utilizing those savings to fund the restoration of a currently frozen police dispatcher position in a future fiscal year. So it doesn't say that it's coming back to the council. So unless I'm missing it, that's why I'm making that request now.
So I think you could direct that the resolution, I think you could adopt the resolution as is, and then maybe take a separate minute motion that encompasses the direction that you're looking to give staff on reporting back to the city council.
Great. And then another question is just, looking at the cost of the position that some council members support unfreezing at the last meeting, we're looking at $178,239. That was not originally budgeted. And so I'm just curious to know if that amount has been taken into consideration as well. So the overtime funds that would be saved, are we talking about a new position, or would they be attributed to another position that that wasn't originally budgeted? Does that make sense, or should I go a little bit more in the weeds?
Is the question clarified enough for staff?
So let me go back. So at the last council meeting, there was a request for an unfrozen position that the full council supported. Shortly after that, there was a request by the council to unfreeze another position that was not budgeted. That was approved by a majority vote, and that amount for one full year is $178,239. It is not clear how we'd fund that position. So is it possible for the overtime savings to go towards that position I'm just a little concerned about where we're getting the budget for these positions, as opposed to a police dispatcher, which I'm not saying we don't need all of them. I'm just saying that one has been approved by a majority council, and we just need to make sure that we have the funds for it.
Sure. Through the chair, Rogan, city manager, in response to the vice mayor's question, when the city council authorized the additional police officer position, the direction was that position be funded by the general fund and with the use of fund balance. So that is in the currently adopted budget. The item before you tonight projects a savings in the adopted budget of approximately $92,000 in the overtime budget. However, it's important to note that police overtime fluctuates annually based on various factors, and the recommendation that you have within the staff report is that the city council appropriate roughly $9,800 for the conversion of a officer to a corporal, but not recognize the additional savings just yet. And what staff is recommending is that staff will analyze the overtime budget on a quarterly basis and will report back to the city council to confirm where those dollars saved. If I'll stop there. I think there could be a larger discussion on how overtime fluctuates and where can go into detail, and I can ask the police chief to go into a little bit more detail on.
Yeah, I don't have a question about the overtime. I understand. I think most of us understand that overtime fluctuates. So is it possible then to apply that savings to that position instead of taking it from the general fund?
That is possible. Yes, that is a action that the city council can take. I would recommend, if you're considering that, to not take that action now, but at the very least wait until we are at the mid-year point and you get your mid-year budget update, and then appropriate any savings that have been found at mid-year, or do that at the end of the year. But again, I think that we should analyze the projected savings before appropriating those to additional expenditures at this point.
Okay. So then it might need to be a separate vote. Can we amend the resolution then to say that the use of those savings will be determined at a later time? I think for the council, it's important just to know that after the last meeting, I did ask what a total cost for that unfrozen position was that the council supported, and what had been approved was only for 8 months. But if you look at the entire year, it's not $118,826. It's actually $178,239. And so when we hire somebody, I'd like to not really think this through so that we don't have an issue after 8 months, having someone maybe with a family that has to, give it up if we don't have the budget for it. So, but the true cost is $178,239. So I would, hopefully that council would support, but I would prefer that we not decide how the additional funds would be spent at this time, and that when we know what the savings are, then we can allocate that and potentially allocate that difference that was not voted on towards that position. So that would be my recommendation, and feel free to comment.
City manager, as you respond, we also get, the council on a quarterly basis gets a review of the budget, and we amend monies. They sometimes get reclassified, they get increased, decreased, etc., and we make modifications. So at those times, isn't that the time to see about those funds, or am I too simplifying it that there's more work than that?
Yeah. So
please.
Typically, Mr. Mayor, yes, you're correct. Typically, the more detailed updates are provided after the 6-month mark. However, in response to the Vice Mayor's question of can it be clarified in a minute motion that the savings will be allocated by the city council at a later date. Certainly, that language can be added to the motion. I would say whether that motion is made or not, it had the exact same effect as the status quo. Right now, there is no appropriation request for the budgetary savings. So by default, they will be allocated by the city council at a later date. And so staff would not have the authority to expend those funds. So I'd like to pause there. With respect to the 8-month budget of the positions, normally when we budget positions, especially positions that are vacant or new, we do not budget the full 12-month in the initial calendar year, but we budget a subset of that, or a reduced amount, knowing that the recruitment and selection time will need to occur. And so for the officer position, it was, I believe the vice mayor is correct, an 8-month budget. But once a position is authorized, we do incorporate the full value of that position in subsequent years and in subsequent budget cycles. And absolutely, the city council could, for the adoption of the 23-24 budget cycle, when we discuss the confirmed savings, utilize those savings for the additional cost of the full year of that officer that was added back. That is absolutely possible.
Yeah, because on the positions, and the number is accurate on the 118,826, but we've also budgeted positions in the budget for 6 months or so, because we knew it was one way in which to save money, and then once the new budget cycle, then the full burden would then be implemented within the budget, and those dollars would have to be would be utilized. So, and after what you've heard, Vice Mayor, what is your?
Yeah, I mean, we go back to the record, right? So the record says that the police department will likely recommend utilizing those savings to fund the restoration of a currently frozen police dispatcher position. So I would still recommend that that we put on the record that we'd like this to come back to us without a recommendation, and we look at what the budget is at that time. Yeah, and I just want to be clear. I'm not saying that the 118 wasn't clear for 8 months. What I'm saying is that you normally don't hire, or I would hope not to hire a police officer for 8 months, right? We'd like to hire someone into longevity with planning, and hopefully they are going to be invested here like we invest in them. So it's good to know what the total cost is before making those decisions. That's all I'm saying. So in this case, what I'm requesting is that that we not request a recommendation at the time and just ask what the overtime savings are, and then make a decision at that time on how we want to allocate those funds.
But I just want to be clear. So are you saying not to go ahead and adopt the current resolution and add a modified motion to have it two separate, or are you saying withdraw this and don't have it? That's where I'm just a little lost. Sorry.
Just to amend the resolution to say that it would come back to the council without a recommendation. So we get a report on the overtime. That's one amendment, because right now that's not in there. And then the second request would be that once we get a report on the savings of overtime, it would be without a recommendation on how to apportion those savings.
City Attorney, can you help me help assist us on, is it better to make a modification in the resolution under I, or is it to have something separate and keep this as whole? City Attorney, you're on mute.
I think it's City Council's discretion if they want to amend the resolution or come back with something separate.
Okay, so we have options, so we can do either. Okay, Councilmember Hamilton.
I just have a question regarding the proposed amendment. I'm not understanding the objection to having a recommendation. It's only a recommendation. The City Council does not need to heed it. It would just be. I don't understand the objection to having if there are savings recognized, and once those are reported out and reported back to the City Council, which I do support amending the language to
have it, to ensure that that gets reported back to us. I don't understand the objection to having a recommendation coming with it, because again, we can choose to abide by the recommendation or not at the council's discretion.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're better off having the full array of what the finances are and where the needs are, as opposed to getting one single recommendation for one single position. So we have another recommendation, right? As a council, as a reminder, we paid quite a bit of money to do the internal and external analysis. And there was a recommendation for an analyst, right? And that hasn't been brought up in the budget in the last meeting, and that's not here either. But that was also a recommendation. Will that be coming to us as well? So I guess my point is that, there are other recommendations. Which recommendation is going to come to us? I'd rather have the full array, or just these are the needs, and then we get to pick how those funds would be spent.
Councilmember Salazar? I'm sorry, Councilmember Hamilton. Were you not done, or?
No, I just said thank the Vice Mayor for clarifying.
Thank you. Councilmember Salazar?
So I just wanted to add that the resolution itself doesn't actually contain any direction on what will happen with the savings. So I think we're safe in approving the resolution. But I did want to say that I agree with the Vice Mayor in terms of what's being speculated in the staff report about how those savings could be used, because in some cases overtime is actually over budget, over the approved budget, and if we're talking about reprogramming money that we didn't have in the first place, it certainly doesn't make sense. And so, the speculation that we're going to have this extra money when maybe that money didn't exist in the first place, and we're already using fund balance to even cover the basic positions, it is, I think, reaching a little too far to start programming those dollars, and we don't even know if they're going to materialize. So, I definitely support where the Vice Mayor is coming from. I understand her position, and I support that. But since it's not included in the actual text of the resolution, I think we may be okay to move forward with it the way it is.
Okay. So we have our consent. We have consents 6A through 6A. We know there's been a modification to the resolution on H, which was clearly outlined and defined, which needs to be a part of the motion, or acknowledging it as read by Director Lee. Then we also have an ask from the Vice Mayor on I and making a modification to that or not. So I look to the council for action and direction. Councilmember Salazar.
And I'm going to suggest that perhaps we approve consent as it is, and then take a separate motion supporting the Vice Mayor's ask that no dollars be reprogrammed without coming back with a full analysis. It's possibly just symbolic, but I agree with her position.
Okay, so I think just to keep it clean, and the city attorney already directed us so that we can go forward and do a second type item, which Councilmember Salazar just said. So is there any action in regards to, again, 6A through 6J as listed, with the only modification to consent item H on the resolution as told to us and by Director Lee?
I will move that we approve the consent calendar as amended per Director Lee.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, Sal, a lot of seconds. Salazar, Councilmember Medina, roll call, please.
Councilmember Hamilton?
Aye.
Councilmember Marty Medina?
Aye.
Councilmember Salazar?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Mason?
Aye.
Mayor Rico Medina?
Aye. Okay, so now consent is done, but there was that discussion on item I, and if it was another action by council, this would be that opportunity. And I just realized I'm going to pause us because what I did not do, this threw me a little bit, was didn't ask if there was any public comments on consent prior to our voting. So let me take a hard pause here and see if there are. And anybody is welcome to speak.
No hands are raised.
Thank you. Now we'll go back to I. Thank you, Council. Any additional action or motion on that item?
Yeah, through the mayor.
Please, Vice Mayor.
So I would motion to request that staff provide us with an update clearly outlining what the difference in overtime savings was, and to not apportion any of those funds until the item comes back to council for a final decision.
I will second that motion.
Thank you.
Okay, we have a motion and seconded. Vice Mayor Mason, Councilmember Salazar, roll call, please.
Councilmember Hamilton.
Aye.
Councilmember Marty Medina.
Aye.
Councilmember Salazar.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Mason.
Aye.
Mayor Rico Medina.
Aye. Okay, that concludes consent, and we'll move on to item number 7, which is study session. And at this point, we'll move on to item A, which is development services, staffing, and service contract update. First, I'd like to turn it over to the city manager for his intro, and then to bring on the president, those giving presentations this evening. City manager.
Good afternoon, members of the City Council, members of the public, Javon Grogan, City Manager. We are here for a study session with the City Council. This is item 7A, and it is titled Development Services Staffing and Update and Service Contract Update. And so this presentation has been prepared for the City Council based on a request to have a presentation from one of the vendors that the city uses for building inspection and other services. During the City Council's comments, there are also questions and a brief discussion on the amount of contracting and the type of contracts that the city uses for development services. So this presentation tonight is really twofold. One, it is an overview of how the city staffs and services development services. That is both planning, building, as well as engineering. And so you will receive a portrait of that. You'll also receive a portrait of the city's procurement process, because based on various contracts, the actual procurement method varies. Some funds are expended by the city's general fund and are adopted through the normal budgeting process. Other funds are reimbursables paid for by development projects and people taking out permits or paying for services. And so what you will see tonight is a combination presentation by the Community and Economic Development Department, also Public Works, and we have also invited WC3, one of the contractors that provide services to the city. We will also discuss staffing, both vacant staff positions and work that is done on a more regular basis by contract staff, and hope to articulate how we perform that service, and we are also available to the City Council for any follow-up questions and a discussion. And so with that, I will turn it over to Director Pamela Wu of the Community and Economic Development Department to go through the presentation. She will begin with slide number 2, objectives.
Thank you, City Manager. Pamela Wu, Community and Economic Development Department Director. I'll take the switch. So with me today is Matt Lee, Public Works Director, Darcy Ashot, Chief Building Official, Radha Mehta, Management Analyst, and also Donald Zhao, Vice President with WC3. So tonight's objective, as City Manager Grogan mentioned, Council has asked for a specific contract, but we want to provide you with more information. We'll kind of walk you through the current department organization charts for both CED and also Public Works to give you a glimpse of the current staffing situation. And we'll kind of briefly touch upon an on-call RFP that was conducted in 2021, which solicited on-call services for planning, building, and engineering. We'll walk you high level kind of overview of how procurement is currently conducted in the city for reimbursement agreement projects, developer funded projects, and or other type of projects. And also we'll hone into the questions that City Council had from the May 31st, 2022 meeting that talks about, how are the consultant services being paid, what kind of development services that we currently are utilizing, and the services specifically provided by this vendor WC3, and what is going on with the building division staffing and recruitment update. And then we'll be pleased to announce that we have concluded a building satisfaction survey as suggested by City Council and provide you an update. Right, so we'll start with the CED organization chart. So on top there is the CED director. Under her and under this position there is the planning arm, who is supervised by the planning and housing manager, and also on the building side a building official. There's also an executive assistant supporting the day-to-day function for calendaring and other tasks, and also the management analyst who specialize in contract, budget, and other day-to-day operation to keep the department running. Within the planning arm, there are two senior planners who are currently with us, and then I'm glad to announce that we'll be bringing two assistant planners as of August 1st. We'll also have a CED intern by mid-August. The planning division will be fully staffed. Under the building side, there are two building inspectors. As you remember, one of our more seasoned building inspector retired as of this January, and we have had another more junior building inspector one. We were able to retain another building inspector one, so we actually have two building inspectors today. We have extended an offer to two technicians, so we'll have two CED technicians starting and start it by, again, mid-August. We have a senior building inspector that is currently fulfilled by the WC3 firm to provide more complex inspection services, specifically for YouTube and also the RAC. We also have off-site and some of the on-site plan check examiner functions that is being supported by WC3, CSG, and True North. And this is anyone who's submitting a building permit that this service is being provided either off-site, meaning that it's not conducted in City Hall at their firm or elsewhere, and we're hoping to also provide that services in City Hall and will not be provided by a city staff person. So this legend basically provides you an overview of Orange Square that is being currently occupied by a city staff, or a blue square that is currently being fulfilled by a consultant. Within the Public Works Department, the engineering side, under the Public Works Director, the Deputy Public Works Director for the Administration and Engineering side oversees a number of engineers, in particular, Senior Traffic Engineer. This position is currently vacant. And under the Principal Civil Engineer, there are a number of engineers who are doing the CIP project. Please know that there's also quite a bit of vacancy under the Principal Civil Engineer. And over on the Land Development Principal Engineering division, where there are three vacancies. So within the Public Works Director side, there is quite a bit of vacancy going on. And you will note that the Land Development Principal Engineer is currently being fulfilled by the CSG vendor, and also a CPN vendor. As I mentioned, we have conducted an on-call development services, knowing that there's a great need of relying on these professional services with the upcoming development projects that's coming to the city. So we've issued an RFP, received 12 proposals. Community and Economic Development selected 6 firms that includes both building and planning to have them on a list where if there's a need, we can contact them. And then engineering have selected 3 firms, and this matrix shows you the variety of these firms. There weren't that many planning firms that responded to the RFP. That's why planning only has 2 on-call services as a result of this RFP. I will now turn the presentation to Radha. She will walk you through the procurement process. Thank you, Director Wu. Good evening, Mayor and members of Council. I'm Radha Mehta, and I'm the Management Analyst for CED. Generally, most contracts require City Council approval for contract value exceeding $75,000. Per the purchasing policy, the exception for this approval is for personnel-related contracts, developer reimbursement contracts, and also staff augmentation contracts. This slide outlines the type of service agreement, the funding source, and the approval authority based on the funding source. Building inspection revenue is recouped by building permit and reinspection fees. The agreement is paid through the general fund prior to obtaining the revenue to offset the cost. For code compliance activity and in-house planning vendor services are also offset by revenue after the services are paid to the city. Off-site plan review services are paid directly from the developer paid revenue and require city manager approval. Project management for city-initiated and CIP projects also require city council approval to obtain funding. The project management and traffic engineering services for development project services are paid directly through the developer's deposit. And staff augmentation services utilize personnel vacancy funds for CED and CIP project fund for public works. Staff augmentation services can also be recouped through developers' project account for reimbursement projects. Update on active development services contracts. The Department of Public Works have selected vendors specializing in both land development and specialty engineering services. The active agreements at this time include CSG, PLS, SNG, WC3, West Yost, Woodard and Kern, and TJLK, Greco, and GHD, which primarily provide land development assistance to the city. The Planning Division has active agreements for on-call CEQA services, planning, staff augmentation, economic and fiscal analysis services, and project management. The city has active agreements with M Group, Good City Company, EPS, MRG, Land Logistics, David J. Powers, and ICF. The Building Division has active agreements for on-call permit technician services, senior building inspection, and plan review services. Through the 2021 RFP selection, the vendors selected include 4Leaf, WC3, True North, CSG, Square Veritas, and Interwest. The active agreements at this time are with 4Leaf, WC3, True North, and CSG. I would like to now turn it over to the Public Works Director, Matt Lee, to discuss engineering-related agreements for development services.
Thanks, Radha. Matt Lee here, Public Works Director. Prior to jumping into the active contracts and the amount of vendors, I just wanted to highlight what City Manager Grogan stated in terms of the different procurement processes. What Public Works does with their development contracts are that we have on-call development contracts with the vendors that were previously stated. Those contracts go for an unspecified amount, but we issue task orders through those contracts, and that's the method of contract control that we used for those vendors. Prior to us issuing any of those task orders, we ensure that we have a deposit in place from the developer before we move forward and proceed with work. So to go through the list of the various vendors, Professional Land Services, PLS, invoices to date since the contract exception in execution is approximately $65,000. TJKM Transportation Consultant, since contract execution has been approximately $168,000. Next slide, please. GHD, since contract execution, approximately $20,000. Next slide. West Yost Associate, approximately $213,000. and would it incur approximately $48,000? Next slide, please. And now I pass it back to Radha to talk about the other active contracts.
Thank you, Director Lee. So for the planning division, we have a contract with Good City Company. We have 3 separate contracts totaling $585,000. We have the housing element, which is a city-initiated project. We have on-call planning services for Crestmore School, which was a city-initiated project, and also on-call planning services for developer-funded agreement. And that agreement is a total of $500,000, and that's a master not-to-exceed agreement amount. And we do issue scope of work specific to projects for these large master agreements. And we also have a contract with M Group or Metropolitan Planning Group for as-needed CEQA services totaling $500,000. And same concept, we issue scope of work depending on the size of the project. And then we have ICF, which we use for CEQA services specific to the Baseline specific plan. That is developer funded, and it is a $1 million contract. Next we have EPS, and we have 2 separate contracts for EPS. We have a $75,000 contract for all city-initiated projects where we require as-needed fiscal analysis and economic services. We also have a developer-funded agreement, which is $250,000, and that's also for as-needed fiscal analysis and economic services for specifically developer-funded projects. The total amount for both of these contracts are $325,000. We also have 2 agreements with MRG, and one is for the project management of Crestmore High School, which was a city-funded agreement totaling $30,000. We also issued an agreement for project management services for U2 Phase 1, which was funded by the developer of $50,000, totaling an aggregate, totaling 2 contracts of $80,000. We have 2 agreements with David J. Powers for CEQA services. We have the housing element agreement totaling $138,850, and also as-needed CEQA services for developer-funded agreements. And this is an open-ended or master agreement of $500,000, and we utilize this firm for various scope of work. We have various projects in the pipeline where we require CEQA services, so a total of $638,850. We also have 2 agreements for land logistics for planning. The first agreement is for professional services to adopt the new cannabis regulation of $45,000. We also have as-needed professional planning services for developer-funded agreements, master agreement of $500,000, totaling agreements of $545,000 with land logistics. Now we're moving over to our building agreements. We have an agreement with 4LEAF for on-call services such as permit technician, building inspection, plan review services. The funding source for these agreements are from the city or general fund, totaling $35,000. We also have agreements with CSG consultants for both building and engineering services. For building, it's also for on-call plan review off-site plan review services for complex building plan review services, and these are funded by the developer directly, so it is a master agreement of $1 million. And then we have an engineering or public works agreement for as-needed project management and review of development projects, and this agreement is funded by the applicant and also the CIP fund, and this is considered a staff augmentation fund. There is no contract amount yet. I believe this contract was executed July 1st, so very recent. We also have an agreement with True North Compliance for building services. So for on-call, permit technician, building inspection, plan review services, and the funding source is the general fund. It is a not-to-exceed amount of $70,000.
And we have another agreement with True North for offsite plan review services for complex building permit plan reviews, totaling $1 million, and it is a master agreement. So total True North agreements of $1,070,000. Last, we have 4 agreements with WC3 for building and engineering services. The first one is the on-demand specialized building inspection services of $250,000. We have off-site plan review services for complex building permit plan review. It's a master agreement of $1 million. We have an on-call permit technician building inspection plan review services of $250,000. Most of the funds for this agreement is exhausted, but the contract date is still active, which is why they're included in here. And then last, we have engineering for as-needed general development, project management, plan review, and engineering and inspection services for the Department of Public Works. The total invoices paid to date for this agreement is $83,788. Now I would like to turn it over to the West Coast Code Consultant Vice President Donald Zhao.
Thank you, Rada. Good evening, Mayor Medina, Vice Mayor Mason, and council members. Thank you for the opportunity to speak in front of you and for the opportunity to serve the City of San Bruno. My name is Donald Zhao. I'm a Vice President and a Regional Manager overseeing the WC3 office in the City of South San Francisco that serves primarily the Peninsula. We have been assisting the City of San Bruno since 2014. I personally have been working with the city since 2006 through another consulting firm. I'd like to highlight what WC3 does. Next slide, please. At WC3, our mission is to team with your community to make a difference. Next slide, please. We at WC3 are a team of multidisciplined professionals that serves local and state agencies with expertise in code compliance. Next slide, please. WC3 was founded in 2006. We have about 140 employees, offices spanning throughout the Western United States and Maryland. Our team comprised of engineers, fire protection engineers, certified permit technicians, inspectors, plans examiners, and building officials. Next slide, please. WC3 provides services that includes plan review, inspections, staff augmentation, code interpretations, permit software, and training. Next slide, please. These services are to assist the building, fire, engineering, and utility sector of local and state agencies when the workload at these agencies are high, or when agencies have need of expertise that are outside of their scope. Next slide, please. For the building division, we balance the rigorous requirement of life safety and code compliance with practical and aesthetics. Perform structural, architectural, mechanical, electrical, plumbing, and energy code compliance reviews for both new and existing buildings. This includes plan review and inspections of these systems. Next slide, please. For fire protection services, WC3's team of qualified fire protection engineers experienced in providing a range of fire and life safety services for multiple types of projects and systems. Our team works closely with the building team to improve coordination for streamlining a plan review and inspection process. Regular training our industry peers throughout the United States. Next slide, please. For the Public Works and Civil Engineering Division, WC3 coordinates, reviews, and provides public improvements initiated by the development community. This begins with the design through the actual construction and eventual final acceptance. We also assist the review and management of capital improvement projects. Next slide, please. WC3 have worked on thousands of projects, from residential projects to industrial warehouses to energy facilities. Here are a few examples that we have assisted over the years. Next slide, please. Okay, what sets WC3 apart? We have years of combined experience across 10 regional offices. WC3 is recognized industry leader with knowledge and expertise in various disciplines of code. Something that is not on this slide I like to mention. We at WC3 roll up our sleeves and work side by side with the applicants who have a successful project. We understand the building code can be complex, but we try to spend the time to educate and help the property owners move the project to the finish line. Oftentimes, we help the applicants steer through the codes. At the end of the day, we are part of the construction team. We are not successful if they are not. Next slide, please. Lastly, WC3 has developed the Code Training Academy to assist the industry in developing more certified permit technicians, inspectors, plans examiners, building officials. We also provide training to local jurisdictions and design firms on building codes. We believe design community that knows a code will have a more efficient plan review and inspection process. Next slide, please. Thank you for your time.
The last part of our presentation will be a staffing and recruitment update.
Thank you, Devon. Good evening, Mayor, Council members. My name is Darcy Asha. I am the Chief Building Official, and I just wanted to provide you some updates on the current building division staffing levels. Pamela touched on these briefly, but just to kind of go over, the senior building inspection position is needed to provide inspection services on larger and more complex projects. Our current permanent staff, inspection staff, is a junior level of experience and would not be able to provide the quality inspections and project management skills needed for these larger projects. Our current staffing salary for this position does not match the level of specialty required for these larger projects at this time. As we move on, for plan check services, at this time we do not have a permanent staffing position for this. Having external plan check review services assures us that we have access to well-trained plan review staff that can provide quick turnaround times. For the in-house plan examiner, it would allow us to have access to consulting plan review services. This will allow the public to be able to reserve time slots to review plan checks, comments, conduct over-the-counter plan review services for less complex projects, or process revisions. This service would help provide expedited permit issuance, assure that there is clear communication and understanding of minimum code requirements. It will also allow old-fashioned face-to-face interaction in the digital world. Please note that this is not a permanently funded city position at this time. For our forward-facing counter, we have extended offers to 2 candidates that will both be starting with the city as a permanent staff members in the month of August. Once we have them onboarded, this will fulfill all of our permanent CED positions. At this point, I'm going to turn it back over to Rada to go over the satisfaction surveys.
Thank you. Per guidance from the CED department, white paper recommendation provided by Mike Rhythm, and through the guidance of City Council, staff added a building customer satisfaction survey on July 16th. The survey was launched in response to the organizational analysis to help us address public concerns. Staff is also adding QR codes on business cards and permits to encourage input from the applicant. We now welcome any questions and further discussion from City Council.
Thank everyone for your presentation and report to the council and community. At this time, what I'd like to do is turn it to my colleagues, see if there's questions that they have on the presentation. There was quite a bit. Maybe we can pull stuff back up if needed. then go to the public, see if they have any questions or comments, and then bring it back to the council for any further comments, etc. So, colleagues. Vice Mayor Mason.
Yeah, thank you for the presentation. I was wondering why the slides changed between 16 and 17. So slides 14 to 16 refer to invoices paid to date for those contractors. And at 17 to 25, it's the not to exceed full contract amount.
So the difference between those slides, the earlier slides were prepared for Public Works. As Director Lee mentioned, that Public Works has a slight different way of procuring contracts. So the Public Works staff does not have a not to exceed maximum for that contract, but they do track the invoices that's been paid and also individual agreement. Versus CD, where our contracts are set up in a way within the next 2 years or a year of time, there is a not to exceed maximum, and that's where the differences are.
But don't they all have a contract out? And don't they all get invoices that we pay monthly?
Matt, would you like to?
Yeah, so just to chime in, like Director Wu has indicated, there is not a not to exceed amount for our development project contracts. The way we control the contract amounts are via task orders. So although they're an on-call contract with no dollar amounts, the dollar amount capacities are placed during the task orders. Those task orders are initiated when we work with developers and we have deposits for those funds to do that work. This allows us to more efficiently process the vendors to help us support in the development of our work.
Okay, so I will leave that for a moment. I'll come back. I'll come back to you with that one. But if we can go back to Director Wu, I just want to make sure we are not getting behind on invoices. Are you saying that we're not getting invoices on a regular basis when you say that there's a not to exceed amount? I do understand that, but we should know how much we've spent so far on the contract.
City Manager.
Yeah, let me take this because I think we're answering one question, but I think the Vice Mayor has a slightly different question. So as we said before, there are simply just two contracting methodologies in planning and building versus Public Works. Public Works Engineering does the required selection process, and they enter into a contract with their selected vendor, but they do not put a maximum dollar amount. They issue task orders against that, and that's what we showed, the expenditures to date for those task orders. On the planning side, they do it slightly differently, but they do the same appropriate recruitment and outreach process, select their vendor, and do a, let's say, contract not to exceed $500,000, and then they pay in, they issue scopes of work and pay based on invoices. Vice Mayor, I think the question that you're asking based on the presentation is on the community development side, we show the not to exceed amount, so the high dollar amount. On the Public Works slides, we show, because there's not a total dollar amount, we show the invoices that have been paid. Certainly under the planning contracts that have been authorized for several months, there have been invoices paid on that. And I think the question you're asking is, for example, the planning not to exceed contract with WC3 for $1 million, how much has been paid under that? We certainly have that information and can provide you that information. Know that the PowerPoint was structured to show what we're under contract for. And so that's why you have the maximum not to exceed dollar amounts on the community development side. But on Public Works, because again, they do not have that not to exceed dollar amount, you don't have that larger contract number. But we can certainly provide what invoices have been paid under the various contracts.
Yeah, because I think in one of our last discussions, there was concern over one of the contractors, and one of the responses we received is there are other contractors, right? And there's work that's being split, but we actually don't know how that work is being split because we don't have any figures today to determine how much of that work is going to which contractor. So we haven't been provided any charts. We haven't been provided any numbers. So we actually only know right now what the contract amounts are for each of the contracts, but we don't actually know who's benefiting from each of the contracts to what level. So that would be very helpful to get. One of the other things that was requested was how exactly is it determined, or what are the rates of, for example, inspections? And I forgot how Councilmember Medina said it, but I think it was like, are you going to a house or a residential, residential versus commercial 3 times, and every time that you're going into a unit or a commercial space, is it consistent, meaning that there's not a new item that's being brought up? So what is the rate of a new item being brought up at the 3rd, the 4th, the 5th, whatever inspection? So we didn't receive any of that information today, and that would obviously help with efficiencies, since that's part of the argument of contracting out or using additional services. It would also be really helpful to identify the planning department of the, I forget what it's called, but it's the plan checks. I remember as a planning commissioner, we had been informed that it is better to contract out that work because it's faster, and I do believe staff supported that. But it's not clear to me what faster is. So what is the turnaround time? Because I have heard from residents that it is not as quick as other cities. And I've also heard from contractors that in comparison to other cities, it's taking longer here in San Bruno. So I do appreciate the report that was provided, but it really didn't get into the details that I think would actually impact the situation that we're trying to resolve. Or at least I can't speak for the whole council. But some of these questions I think would help to really determine our next steps if this comes back to us, which it likely will. And when I say it, I mean an additional contract, additional funds being given. And I think the other question I have is looking at these numbers in particular. I think on the public works side, it is over $100,000 for one particular contractor, and over $100,000 for a number of these contracts that I don't recall seeing before the council as a whole. So this might be a question for the city attorney's office, but I have requested in the past that council be provided procurement training on what is acceptable and what's not acceptable, what should be coming to the council, what shouldn't be coming to the council. And there's at least, I would say, $2,200,000 here that has not gone to the council off the top of my head, just looking at the presentation. So it may not be a question you can answer now unless you know why the $1 million contracts didn't come to us, and that's okay. That can come back to us. But I do want to make sure we're following the procurement guidelines on both ends.
Mr. Mayor and Vice Mayor, and I would just say that there's, in deciding when a contract comes before the city council depends on the facts of that contract. And so that is to say that I would have to come back and, after understanding the facts of these existing contracts, be able to explain why and how each of them were approved.
Yeah, and I would actually say at a higher level. I'm not even necessarily requesting that. I think that would be great to know. But I am really requesting that the council be informed of what exactly the procurement process is. What are the thresholds? It has been 3 years. We've never been trained on it. It was first requested in 2019 around the small business policies. I think it is really important that we understand what those thresholds are. I get concerned when I see a smaller contract over $100,000 that didn't go through the process because, there's a purpose in competitive, having competitive selection. So anyway, I would just raise not so much each individual request, but more so at a high level that the council somehow be trained or they have a special study session on what exactly those thresholds are. How does the procurement process work in municipal government, in particular in San Bruno? And I see other council members have their hands up. Thank you.
City Manager, City Hall, Was there a further response before I go to the next council member?
Sure.
Please.
Just quickly, through the mayor, thank you for recognizing me. Just in response to council member Mason's question, I just want to be very clear with the city council that in the presentation that you have, there are listed the various types of contracts and the method of procurement that was followed. For example, some of the contracts that are paid for by developer reimbursements as per the city's purchasing policy do not go to the city council for approval. However, all invoices that you know that are paid by the city do show up in the published agenda reports on all of your regular meetings. And so absolutely additional information can be provided, but I just want to be very clear that staff did, in the information that we provided today, provide a brief overview of the procurement process, as well as the methods that on how those contracts were authorized. It's important to note that I think Vice Mayor Mason mentioned appropriately bid. How the projects are bid is actually distinctly different from how they're authorized. And so that's a total another piece. But because a project is, let's say, a developer reimbursement project, it's important to note that while that, per our purchasing policy, does not have to go to the council for approval, it absolutely does, and they have followed the procurement processes, which a contract of that level requires an RFP. And I think in the material we provided you tonight, we highlighted that a number of these vendors were selected through an RFP process that was conducted in 2021.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Medina, please.
I first want to thank everyone for this discussion tonight. And this is the most comprehensive reporting that I've ever seen in 12 years working here and the 7 years being on the council. I think what would be helpful is there was the exceptions. I think it was like the third or fourth slide that kind of explained when it had to come to council or not. And I think it was pretty much developer reimbursements. So it's probably why we're not seeing those. And the city manager or any staff could kind of step in any time. It was just the exceptions. There, yeah. So, yeah, right there. So, and then to change that, we'd have to go back and look into our policy. So, it'd be nice to have some discussion about that at some point. The one thing I wanted to commend and then also ask is, it's great that we started a survey. I went and took a look at it, and I just would want to make sure that we're going to be reporting those out publicly, probably quarterly, to council at some point. At an agency that I was worked at before, we would have our quarterly updates, and we would be listing how many permits we issued, what the time frame it took to process those agreements. So that would be helpful for us to have a better understanding of the experience that our community's experiencing. So I do want to say that I've heard a number of complaints, but lately I've heard a couple commendations. Today I was downtown and talking to the new owner of the Chopsticker Lab, and he had a lot of good things to say. So I'm also aware that some other businesses may not have that, and there's many reasons why someone could have a bad experience, but it's important to understand that so that we can improve. So thank you for the report. Looking forward to seeing more of the data. The question I would have a follow-up on is, this survey is, I believe it was barcoded somewhere on a permit, or how does that getting to the permit issuance? How does that happen? How does somebody know about the survey?
Yeah, so we have a QR code. It's actually on our website. So it's on our website. We have the link for the survey as well as the QR code. We're also planning on adding the QR code on the back of the business cards for building inspectors. So when they're out in the field, they can just hand their business cards. And also we're adding it to our permit application as well. Anyone who has a smartphone can just easily access the survey.
Okay, and the follow-up when there's some dissatisfaction, what type of follow-up is anticipated? Is there a contacting of the person who obtained the permit? What's the plan going forward with that?
Okay. Councilmember Medina, so we have developed the survey and right now we're targeting anyone who has received a building permit and is going through the building inspection process. So hopefully we'll learn a lesson or two from this process. So we're asking contractor, property owner, and whatnot to fill out the information, basically telling us what your project is about and what you like and don't like about that process.
Got it. And on the survey, it doesn't list the permit number. Is there a way to add that? That might be helpful to determine the complexity of the permit.
We were trying to keep it more unanimous, but we will we'll add that building permit number as well.
Yeah, I mean, it could be, they don't have to give the number if they don't want, but if they wanted to, then they could, so that it could be tracked. And it's all about connecting the dots and understanding, well, why was the person not satisfied? And if you go back and look at the permit, sometimes you see that there's a lot of re-inspections.
That is a good suggestion. So we'll go ahead and include as optional information if they would like to include their building permit number, or we can track, certainly.
Thank you.
Councilmember Hamilton.
So I also want to thank staff for this report. It's very, very comprehensive. And my questions were also around the survey, and Councilmember Medina asked several of them. But so I'll just, I'm very, very pleased to see the survey in place. I think this is going to be really, really helpful. And I'm glad that we're following the white paper recommendation for it and I've implemented it. I noticed that the survey went live on July 16th. And then there was the comment on the slide that overall building services have shown satisfactory rating. The survey's been live for 10 days. How many surveys have we gotten back approximately in order to be able to make that claim that we're generally doing satisfactory?
Yes, as of today, I checked and we've received 5. And overall, the average rating is 4.4. That's 5.
Okay. So yeah, obviously super early on in the process, and that's great. Hopefully, the numbers will track that way. But I just wanted to ask that particular question, and I echo what Councilmember Medina was suggesting regarding regular reports back on how we're doing there. And again, I applaud the adding this to a process so that we can get feedback from our residents and business owners on the process and how we can improve. Thank you.
Councilmember Vice Mayor Mason.
Yeah, thank you. I just want to say that for the purchasing portion, I just want to make sure I'm clear, because maybe I missed it, but I don't see it in the packet. I see it in the presentation that was sent to the council and that was given tonight, but I actually don't see it in the packet. Are you saying that are you just referring to the one slide that Councilmember Medina mentioned?
So, Vice Mayor Mason, for this study session, there was not a staff report. All the contents of the study session are in the PowerPoint.
Okay, good. So I just wanted to make sure I didn't miss it. And if in the purchasing policy is, where would that be?
We can provide it to the City Council. I do not know exactly where it is
That would be really helpful. And then I also just wanted to ask in the survey, I'm not sure who's responsible for it, but if there could be an added question around timeliness. There's really nothing about timeliness, which is probably the biggest complaint that we get around turnaround time. And I think that would be helpful to determine kind of where we are, or at least what subjective opinions might think when this is shared with us. When would be do I need council support for that request?
We can certainly add a question to the survey on responder timeliness.
Okay, great. Okay, and then I guess my next question is how often will these surveys be shared with the council moving forward? The survey responses.
Vice Mayor Mason, so I understand that the City Council has asked tonight to have a summary of the survey responses provided quarterly. My request to the City Council is let me discuss with the staff on the process for that and workload implications, as well as the appropriate method to provide those to the City Council. My gut is if it's going to be a more routine matter, it's not something that would be agendized. It would simply be an off-agenda memo sent to the City Council. Happy to have any City Council comment on that, but I think it would be not something that would be a part of your business meeting every 3 months or however so often, but it's something that you would receive and, of course, could ask questions about. With regard to the frequency, I understand the request to be every quarter. I do think that it's important to have a standard city process for these, and I do know that other departments are looking at doing customer satisfaction surveys, and unless the City Council is particularly interested in receiving customer satisfaction surveys from the Community Economic Development Department on a quarterly basis, feel free to opine and direct. Or does the City Council wish to have all surveys that are conducted related to the City Council on a quarterly basis? I know that there's a workload implication with that, and we would need to discuss that, but just asking for clarity, or Council would like for staff to understand their request to receive information on customer satisfaction surveys and allow that to come back to you with a plan to do that.
Yeah, I'm sure fellow council members have responses, but I think every 6 months would be great. And I'm not asking for a 20-minute report. The Survey Monkey should automatically give you a report of how many people have filled out the survey and a chart of what the results are of those. So I'd be completely content with that, a 5-minute update. Even similar to COVID, the COVID updates where they're just part of consent would be fine, but I do think they should be public given the amount of funds expended. And I would just want to thank the staff for putting this together and the contractor for coming out. I do think it leaves a number of questions still outstanding that are really the critical issues that both residents and business owners have brought up. So hopefully at some point we'll get an update on those questions. But I do think it's a start. Thank you.
Councilmember Hamilton.
So the Vice Mayor made the suggestion I had put my hand up for, which would be as far as sharing the survey results with us, just to put it on consent. That's how other information like the warrant register and those types of things are communicated to us, and plus then they become a public document, and residents can see those numbers as well. So that's what I would advocate for as far as sharing with us. As far as quarterly versus every 6 months, I would rather see them quarterly, but if it's if it is coming out of Survey Monkey, that hopefully is not going to be a huge effort to do, and it doesn't have to have a massive amount of information around it unless the data requires it. It's just a matter of sharing the data the same way that other information, like I said, the warrant register, those types of things are shared with us.
Thank you.
All right, any other questions at this time from colleagues? All right, let's see if there's any members of the public.
I will be bringing in Gemma Lee and Jason. Gemma Lee and Jason, whenever you're ready.
Yes, hi. So again, thank you for putting the presentation together about the customer satisfaction. I guess a couple questions around how the results will be used to determine performance of either the in-house CED team and its third parties. Also, I did just look at the questions or the survey, and it is difficult to determine, or there aren't any fields to determine one, the permit number, and also who the inspector was, because ultimately those are two areas that would be extremely helpful in, again, measuring success or determining performance. So I do want to call that out. And I've got a whole bunch of others, but I think I'll need more than 3 minutes. So I just wanted to call those 2 points out.
Thank you for your comments. Next speaker, please.
No other hands are raised.
All right, thank you very much. We'll bring it back to council. No, I do see somebody. Okay, we took care of that. All right, was there anybody else speaker-wise, or are we good? Okay, seeing none, City Hall?
Yes, Mayor, before we close out this item, just a couple notes. So I did just confer with staff on the ability to generate a quick report. I know I do Survey Monkey too, and it seems that you can just click print and summarize the report. I do not believe, and I just conferred with staff, that there is the ability to sort of clip it for every 3 or 6 month period. And so there would need to be some analysis done if council desires a sort of what are the comments for these 6 months, or would council just like the survey printout that is in total that may actually not, based on the CAN reporting, allow you to differentiate what the comments were in that period. So, I mean, if we're looking to say, hey, you want no analysis, you just want a CAN report, I think we'll be limited to the tools that are available to us. But if council does want something that's clipped for a certain period, that will require staff work to do. And I just want to be sure that we're not setting an expectation that then we're not able to come back, which is why I sort of recommend that we take the general direction and develop a plan that we would submit to council to say, we understand you'd like 6 month feedback, and here's what can be done. Just also with regard to, I think there was a public comment on adding personnel information or employee name. We would not add that information to the survey, especially because the intent now is to have those reports summarized and put on a public agenda. But certainly if there is a comment and it appears to be warrant personnel matter, staff will, if the person provides contact information, which is optional, certainly reach out to that person and take appropriate action.
Okay. Was there final questions or comments from colleagues? You know, and I know sometimes it's, you know, the first round plan check, you know, what does that take? Or what was it then and what is it now? So I think some of those things are important. So you know, when you're trying to do the survey and it's like, well, tell us how long it took. Well, I don't know how long it normally should take. I can be told something, but I don't know how to average that unless I started polling other cities. So that may have some of the similar folks doing the job. So I think it's just, it's a matter, but city manager, you had asked as well, and I think it's important you check with staff to see what is able, because we want to set expectation. You're absolutely correct. But also we can say to do all these things, and we're not giving you We're asking more than what it can be provided to meet those expectations. So I do want to have that balance. And I know the Vice Mayor talked about maybe twice a year. City Manager, you talked about maybe it's something that's provided to the council and it can always be agendized if there was a concern. So whatever works, but we're also working with the team to see what's most effective and efficient for the operation. Is there anything else, folks? If not, okay, we will continue on the study session item 7, which is item B. Before we go to B, Vice Mayor.
Yeah, I think I wanted to make sure we provided direction on when we expected the updates. So I would propose 6 months is enough time that if there's something we need to worry about, that also gives staff 6 months to try to address it before the next report. So I would recommend 6 months.
City Hall. Just saw the hand.
Thank you, Mayor. I too was going to ask for a little clarity on council's intent on follow-up items. Certainly with the request to provide information on the invoices paid under those master agreements, we can certainly provide that in short order, and we'll provide that to the City Council. But I do think that there were at least 2 things that I noted were mentioned. One is the number of times new items are brought up on re-inspections. Is that a request of the City Council? And also note that I do not think that we have a database where we can sort of just click print on that. And so that would be analysis. Are you looking for a period of time? Do we want I mean, again, you feel free to give broad direction, staff, and we'll come back with a plan. But if you're looking for, a date for specific feedback provided, it would be appropriate to let's to have some clarity on that. Again, on plan check turnaround time, there's often many factors on plan check turnaround time. Oftentimes there's an inspection and there's a request for information, and the developer or homeowner may take several weeks to get the information back. And in a prior life, I've done development review studies and looked at cycle time analysis, and it is a very detailed study because you actually need to break it up and look at each point in that review cycle and have clear dates. I've been to cities as a consultant where they had great systems, and we went in and there were flags in the system of the response was received on this date and staff responded on that date. That's clear. In a city like this where we don't have those robust systems, I've been in cities where we, as a consultant, and we went through the files and picked out random permit applications and did a sort of hand tabulated analysis. And so just know that some of, I think, the broad questions that are being asked are not sort of we like that back in 2 weeks question. And so if council can be very clear on what specific questions you would like, what information you would like to have brought back, or again, feel free to provide broad direction, and staff will come back to the City Council with responses and a plan.
Okay, thank you, City Manager. Vice Mayor?
Yeah, so I guess to follow up is that data that the contractor can get for us through their systems, because they specialize in this area and they're doing the work.
So can we specify on what contractor or what contract? And then oftentimes, if we're talking about WC3 that uses that provides building inspection services, they use our system because we assign tasks through our tracking system. And so it's again, I think it's difficult to respond on the fly to our ability to provide the data and analysis. I think sort of broad direction is better from a policy body, and again, we can come back with what that would entail.
Okay. So I guess let me hear from the other council members, because I do think it's important, but I also am well aware of how long it takes to manually count these. And I just don't know what capacity staff has right now as far as reporting. So, and it doesn't sound like any of us know right now what staff can do and can't do to give that direction. So we'll hear from the other council members.
Councilmember Hamilton.
Regarding, which of the metrics do we feel are important to try to get after? I do think that the re-inspections is something that's important to get after, and I would be content with providing more broad guidance just to staff on how far back to go, because it's gonna depend on how manual of a task it is. If every individual permit needs to be analyzed to count up the average, then asking for 3 years of data is unreasonable. So I would leave it to staff's discretion on how far back to go based on how complex that task turns out to be.
Councilmember Medina.
Right. So it's my understanding we still use Trackit, the software to issue permits. And if we are, then there's a lot of report forms that are in there, and we probably don't have the staff that have been familiar enough to kind of generate those reports. There's many reports in there, but I would suggest that maybe staff kind of look it over and kind of see those reports. I recall sometimes staff would go to training for somebody that was kind of in charge of Trackit, but my main thing is how do we deal with complaints, right? And complaints are going to come, but sometimes, how do we follow up on complaints, and when do we follow up on complaints? Having re-inspection fees or having re-inspections, it could be totally at the fault of the applicant or the contractor. I've given numerous re-inspections in my career, and it takes a while sometimes for people to figure it out. Like, you have to do it the way the plans are, the way the code is. But it's when people are complaining is of the customer service, and so we have to have a clear way of getting back to them and seeing what the problem is. Going through a data sheet, a spreadsheet, or going through this whole Trackit system probably is not as useful as when the permit holder is told up front, hey, if you have a problem, you can contact some number and let us know if there's a problem. When I was an inspector, I was happy to give my boss's number to somebody. It's like, if you have a problem with my inspection, go ahead and call. Because, and I got backup from my supervisor, and then they would never call again. It was just kind of like teaching the community, the contracting community primarily, like, you have to do it the right way, right? And kind of having that upfront meeting with the contractor, like, look, these are the important things I'm going to be looking for you on your job, and you're going to do it right. So I'm interested in hearing, how we follow up on complaints. We heard today, like we didn't get a response from staff, and so something that's spelled out a little clearer, and how staff's going to take care of a complaint, and following through and making sure that the person who's complaining, they're heard. And is the complaint valid? Sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't. But we have to look into them in order to improve.
Any other comments? City Manager, I don't know if that gave you what you need.
Mr. Mayor, it does, totally understand that the City Council would like data on cycle times, re-inspections. We will go back and do a analysis of what information the system has, and if a sort of detailed analysis is needed to answer
particular question, we'll certainly address that. Understand Councilmember Medina's question about how our complaints handled. Also want to note, I know the City Council knows this, but we are actively in the middle of a system migration from Trackit to a new MGO system as well. So it is important to note that that is an active project that we're set to go live in a few months with, actually, I think either at the end of the year or the beginning of the next year with the new system. So I do think that there's a team that can look into this, but they are actively working on the migration.
Okay, not hearing anything else, I was going to go ahead and move on. All right, we will go on to, and before, I just realized it is, let's say, 9 o'clock. Some of us have been meeting since 5. So what I am going to do is do a 10-minute break. And just if you could all please keep logged on. And you just turn off your cameras and mics. And then we'll be back in 10 minutes. Thank you. We'll be... Being back to San Bruno City Council meeting for July the 26th. And we are on item 7, which are study sessions. We are now on item B, which is provide direction on ballot measure to establish term limits. And we will first hear from city manager and then the city attorney as well.
Good evening again to the City Council, members of the public. Javon Grogan, City Manager. We are here for, as the mayor said, our item 7B, a study session on a potential ballot measure for November 2022 on establishing term limits for the mayor and city council offices. Tonight's presentation will be jointly provided by myself as well as Tricia Ortiz, our interim city attorney. Our objective for tonight is to go over quickly the timeline for discussion of the and the ballot measures. We will provide a background of elected official terms, talk about the draft ballot question, and open the discussion for council questions as well as public comment. Brief timeline, important to note, on November 26th of last year, the City Council had a study session where you discuss a number of potential ballot items for staff to research and bring back to you that included term limits. Then on March 29th, work was done. On March 29th, staff presented a number of options at a study session for various ballot questions. But then we talked specifically about the term limit item, and the City Council provided direction for that potential ballot measure to be included in a likely voter poll, as well as provided clarity on the contents of the potential term limits and measure, and we'll talk a little bit about that shortly. And then on June 7th, the City Council received a presentation from staff as well as our consultants on the results of the likely voter poll for term limits. That poll did show that a term limit item would likely be successful, and the City Council further clarified that the term limit should be put forward in a draft ballot language for the office of mayor as well as the City Council offices for consecutive terms, no more than 12 years. We'll talk a little bit about that shortly, because the terms for the mayor is different than the terms for council members. Background on elections here in the city of San Bruno. Council knows this very well, but members of the public, the city of San Bruno has a governing body comprised of 5 individuals, 1 mayor elected at large, and 4 council members. The city is currently in the process of transitioning to by-district elections. That transition will first occur on the November 8th, 2022 ballot, where districts 1 and districts 4 will be up for election. And so this is the first time in the city of San Bruno where the 4 council members will start to transition to districts. And so districts 1 and 4 in 22, and districts 2 and 3 in 24. And each council district serves a 4-year term, and the mayor serves a 2-year term. With that, I will turn it over to our interim city attorney to discuss the current terms of the election.
Right. Hello, Mayor Medina and City Council members. So currently, your municipal code provides for the term of the elected mayor to be a 2-year term, and the term for the each city council member to be a 4-year term. The municipal code also specifies that there are no limits on the number of terms an individual can serve. However, the City Council has an option to place a measure on the ballot to establish limits for the mayor and the district. So the measure would be an ordinance that is presented to the voters to amend the municipal code to specify that there would be term limits. Based on past direction, the term limits that are being considered is for the office of elected mayor or the office of elected city council member to be limited to no more than 12 consecutive years. And what that means is that the mayor may not serve for more than 6 consecutive terms in office of 2 years, and the city council members may not serve for more than 3 consecutive 4-year terms in office. This provision would apply prospectively, meaning that it would begin with all terms starting after December 1, 2022, if the voters were to approve adopting the ordinance that would be submitted to them. So the measure goes to the voters in the form of a ballot question, and the proposed ballot question is, shall an ordinance be adopted to amend the City of San Bruno Municipal Code to limit service on the City Council or as mayor to consecutive terms of no more than 12 consecutive years? That's the ballot question. However, the resolution that calls the election and submits the measure to the voters would also require that the full text of the ordinance be included in the ballot materials, and it would be the ordinance that spells it out in more words and kind of longer and more detailed description how the term limits work, and that is the ordinance that would be amending the municipal code. And so the next steps are that we are going to take questions on this presentation, take public comment. We'd also like to get direction from the City Council on the proposed ballot measure, and if the City Council desires, we would return to the City Council on August 3rd when we would present to the City Council the resolution that calls the election to submit the ordinance to the voters for the November election. I think with that, we're ready for questions.
Okay, thank you very much for the presentation. At this time, questions from colleagues to staff on the presentation. And if not, we'll move to see if there's any members of the public that wish to speak on the presentation or have questions.
No hands are raised.
Thank you kindly. We'll bring it back to the council, and I think what you heard from the city attorney and the manager, or you saw the verbiage that was on the screen, and if there's any modifications, thoughts on that, maybe we can put that back up on the screen or share that if you don't mind. This would be the opportunity in which to state those at this time, because when it comes back in August 3rd, then therefore it kind of needs to be solidified. Again, that's just for the ballot questions on the term limits, etc., as was stated by the attorney and manager. Councilmember Hamilton.
I think this wording is very clear. I mean, we went back and forth in the previous sessions on this, and and about how to address the potential confusion because the mayor and city council members have different terms. This is very straightforward. I think this is very, very clear. I don't have any suggestions.
Okay. Are there any folks that have suggestions on modifications or changes? I'm seeing and hearing none. This is then coming back as you see written on the screen, and this would then go for April 3rd for a up or down vote by the members of the council, requiring 3 votes in order for this to go to the ballot. And of course, staff is always able to please correct me if I'm incorrect. Vice Mayor Mason.
Yeah, just a question, something just to think about, but whether we say shall an ordinance be adopted to amend the City of San Bruno Municipal Code to limit service, should we think about years, to limit years on the City Council or as mayor 2 consecutive years of no more than 12? Because I just for us, I think it's common terminology as council members what service means, but to any member of the public, do you think that everybody will understand that service is actually referring to your term? Maybe if it's a non-issue, tell me and I will drop it, but I'm trying to make it as simple as possible.
Because it's service on the city council or service as mayor. I think that's pretty cut and dry as to what it means. And of course, the years part is handled later at the end of the sentence. I didn't see that as being ambiguous when I read through it, but I could be too close to it.
That's what I'm worried about, that I'm too close to it too.
Are there any other thoughts, comments, modifications, changes? One suggestion? I'm not seeing.
I think that's, Mr. Mayor,
Yes, please, Mr. Medina.
it's satisfactory. I think this is just that first part. I think the city attorney said more language will be shown later, but this captures pretty much, I think, pretty well. So I'm fine with it.
Okay. Any other thoughts or changes? I'm not hearing any from council. City manager, city attorney, does that give you direction or guidance that you need?
Mayor Javon Grogan, city manager. Yes, I think that's clear direction. Just wanted to point out to council that the ordinance is in the draft, is in the staff report as Exhibit A. And so the ordinance that we would bring back on August 3rd, Mayor, you said April, August 3rd, is included in the staff report.
Okay, so you're feeling we're good on this item?
Yes.
Thank you, sir. With that, we'll move on to council comments. First is just me, and then, and this was just to bring some up to date in regards to some of our bus changes. When I say bus routes in the city of San Bruno with Samtrans, and Lupita is going to assist me, which I appreciate greatly. Folks, you may know I serve for the North County, so I'm appointed or elected by the mayors of the county to serve on the Samtrans Board of Directors, the first San Bruno person to do so. But with that, also you get on some of this information. Back in 2019, before I started on the board, Reimagine Samtrans started their implementation and outreach to assess and try to have more effective and efficiency within their bus system. This is periodically what they do community outreach, and then make modifications. So what they did do is they included like 3 rounds of public engagement over the course of 2.5 years. During their outreach effort, Samtrans conducted over 200 outreach meetings and collected thousands of comments and surveys and responses. Next slide, please. Thank you. The Samtrans Board of Directors on March 4th did approve of this year after getting the feedback and receiving the information to implement the first phase of the network changes effective August 7th of this year. For us in the city of San Bruno, route changes in San Bruno include routes 141, 142. Route 141 will incorporate existing Route 140, which is being eliminated under the new network between Skyline College and San Bruno Park. It will provide a new connection between South San Francisco and Skyline College. School trips will be provided on new routes 40, 41, and 42. Route 141 will run every 30 minutes on weekdays and every 60 minutes on weekends. Route 142 will be a new route connecting SFO Rental Car Center and AirTrain, the Shops of Tamparan, San Bruno BART, Shelter Creek Condominiums, San Bruno Senior Center, and the Bay Hill and Mills Park neighborhoods. The Senior Center will now have a weekend service route 142, which will run every 60 minutes, 7 days a week. Next slide, please. Next slide. And Samtrans will be adding 5 new bus stops in San Bruno in August. Samtrans worked with the city. I was on the Zoom meeting as a board of director, and they work with staff for permitting and just bringing that they do to every community. For Route 121, A pair of bus stops will be added on College Drive between Susan Drive and Skyline Boulevard, improving access to Pacific Heights and the Rollingwood neighborhoods. For Route 141, we will now travel on Sneath Lane between El Camino and Real and Cherry Avenue. A pair of bus stops will be added on Sneath Lane at National Avenue. This will allow passengers to access the nearby medical offices, the VA clinic, for example, residents, the Marine Corps Reserve Center, and the Golden Gate National Cemetery. For Route 142, one stop will be added on Genevieve Avenue at Hawthorne Avenue. This will improve the bus stop spacing that's on this route to be consistent. Next slide, please. And I wanted to make it very brief and succinct. But again, obviously there is information that they can contact with Samtrans as far as more information concerned. What it is, it's also a living, breathing document. So routes can be modified based on needs and community's interest. But that is just a little highlight of San Bruno. And with it being August 7th upcoming, I wanted to share with you how it's affecting us in our community. With that, thank you very much, Lupita. Stop sharing the screen. And with that, I'll ask my colleagues if there's any council comments, please. Councilmember Salazar.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I had a request from a member of the community to raise their Ukrainian flag again. And in light of the continued hostilities, it seemed appropriate to me, and so I wanted to bring that back to the council to see if it's something that we could get support on, and see if we can't do that for another period of time. I got two nods, so.
Yeah, I think you have probably, and City Attorney will correct me, but we can request that this be placed on the next council agenda under council comments, and please chime in if I'm directing my colleagues incorrectly.
So, Mayor Medina, you can request that this item be brought back to the City Council, the next special meeting to be held on August 3rd.
Under council comments or conduct, or how is that?
It could be under, it would be...
It would be an action item. We can put it on the consent calendar for action. But
yeah, because there usually isn't council comments on special meetings. So thank you, City Manager. That would have to be the action.
Thank you.
Can I make a suggestion? Just before I'll wait my turn, but just on this topic, maybe we can just add it to the next special meeting, since it seems like it'll get support, and that way it'll move a little bit faster.
Well, I think with the City Manager saying August 3rd is the next special meeting.
Thank you. I don't have the calendar in front of me. Thank you.
No worries. Councilmember Hamilton.
All right. So I have a suggestion for my colleagues. As you know, we've been working on our policies and procedures over the entire time I've been on council, and it's been ongoing for a while. And our next meeting on the topic is tentatively scheduled for August 30th. And in my opinion, this is something we really need to bring home. And in my observation is that the current process we've been following isn't really conducive to doing that. Council members, including myself, are coming up with their suggestions in the meeting on the fly, and then staff is having to take that feedback away and go and prepare another version for the next meeting, and then rinse and repeat. And we've done that a whole bunch of times. And I'm just going to suggest that we have staff distribute the latest draft of the policies and procedures as soon as it's ready, and that we as council members commit to taking the time to write up any suggestions that are of substance and send those back to staff in advance of the meeting so that they can incorporate those suggestions as drafts into the document so that we can then discuss it and finalize in the special meeting. I'm under no illusions that we're going to finish it and sign off on it in one meeting, but I think this would really help us to speed up the process. And this is on the agenda, so I'm not looking for anybody to
to agree or even not, but I'm just, this is how I intend to approach this next round, and I just wanted to throw that out as a suggestion to my colleagues to do the same to help us bring it home.
Anything else, Councilmember?
I'm sorry?
Thank you. Was there anything else?
Yep. Yes, I have two more things. So I want to remind everyone that this coming Saturday is the monthly Pancake breakfast at the American Legion. It'll go from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. And so please come out and support our American Legion host and have a delicious breakfast and hang out with your community. And then also on Saturday, competing, so I'm going to cook bacon as fast as possible and then hightail it over to Parkside. There is an event for beautifying the front of Parkside, put together by resident Michelle Carenza, and the goal is to transform and beautify the front of the campus before the first day of school. So laying down weed screen, gopher nets, that sort of thing. The request is that you please bring your own shovel and gloves, and that's starting at 9:30 a.m. on this coming Saturday, July 30th. The Lions will be there. The Grand Leader is providing sandwiches, so it should be a great event and a great way to help out your community. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Medina.
Yes, sounds like a busy Saturday, absolutely. But also tomorrow, Second Harvest, Silicon Valley, food distribution at Bel Air School, 1:45 to 4 o'clock. The need for food is extremely high, continues to be high. We've increased the number of the amount of food from 200 to 220. So if you need food, come on out. Or if you'd like to help, we definitely can use your help too. So hope to see people out there. Wear your sunscreen and some hats. It's going to be pretty warm tomorrow. So hope to see everyone there. Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Mason.
Thank you. So just a couple of announcements. Just a reminder that National Night Out is on August 2nd, this next Tuesday, starting at 7 p.m. So far we have Shelter Creek, Marymount, and Claremont 2 that are participating. And thank you to the council members. Just about the entire council will be at one event or another. So we look forward to seeing everybody, and hopefully the community comes out to celebrate. AZ Gallery, and someone mentioned this earlier, but AZ Gallery is hosting the Sensei Granddaughters Journey. These are 5 women who are descendants of individuals who were interned at the Japanese camps, who took a really soul-searching tour to Manzanar and created a documentary around their experiences. But in addition to that, they're all artists in their own right, and so they have a special exhibit that'll be starting on Saturday from 12:30 to 3, but will actually be available in San Fran from July 24th through September 3rd. So hopefully you're able to check it out, if not this Saturday, just to go in and see not just the gallery, but also to really maybe learn, educate yourself, and really take advantage of this opportunity that we have here in San Bruno. I just want to let everyone know that we did have a RAC meeting, committee meeting recently, and just as a quick update, that the report we received was that everything is on schedule for the Recreational Aquatic Center. We're on budget, and we did confirm that everything's been paid within 30 days. So so far things are looking up and they're positive, and can't wait for that swimming pool to open. Just some exciting news for people who watch these meetings that maybe are not on the internet if you're on Channel 1. But Kiss My Boba is a new place that's on El Camino Real, and it was highlighted in KQED in their newsletter, which is really neat. But they highlighted their twist on boba drinks around Tonga, or with a Tongan twist. And so I really want to encourage people to get out and kind of get out of our comfort bubbles and maybe try something different and new. But I thought it was exciting. And the other exciting news since our last meeting is that Mazra, which is on San Bruno Avenue, was highlighted in the Chronicle, and this is the top 25 restaurants to visit in the Bay Area this summer. So it's pretty nice to see a San Bruno restaurant highlighted in the news, and there have been lines since they opened, but it's great to see Mazra up there. And then let me see, two more quick things. One is just a reminder to everybody who's watching that this is the first year that San Mateo Union High School District is going to districts. So, if you are a resident of San Bruno, please think about running. This is a very important position in the Union High School District, and there's an opportunity for representation, and hopefully we get a couple candidates out there to really show their pride in San Bruno and representation. And I also just wanted to thank Lupita because she has stepped into this role, and just like Vicki did in the past, you're doing a great job. And for people out there in the public who may not know, Lupita stepped into this role as our clerk, and I just wanted to kind of highlight and recognize her because she hadn't done this before, and I think she's doing a great job. Thanks, everybody.
Any other comments from colleagues? Did want to just, not having a discussion, I'm just making a comment, but the policy procedure had already been sent out through Javon in the city manager's office, so we've already had that. However, he's kind enough to resend it in case, and maybe make a note of getting requested. With that, if there is nothing else at this time, or from staff, city manager, anything? If not, we'll go ahead and appreciate everybody being here, colleagues, community, staff. Thank you to everybody, your presentations and your time. And with that, we will go ahead and adjourn this meeting to the next regular scheduled meeting of August the 23rd at 7 p.m. Meeting adjourned.